As a follow on from my posts on the underlying issues behind addiction and on facing these emotions in recovery, today is all about shame, toxic shame. Toxic shame is the feeling of guilt and self loathing that can lead to addiction, self sabotage, and depression. It's a form of trauma that people experience when they are treated unfairly or overly criticized. It's essentially a defense mechanism that's activated when someone is repeatedly attacked. The reason it can lead to addiction, self sabotage, and depression is because people are often not even aware of it. It comes from internalizing abuse that others have inflicted on you and believing that because of their treatment, you are somehow worthless. It's a common form of shame found in children and teens who are neglect, sorry, neglected and abused. However, these feelings often carry into adulthood. It's not a temporary emotion like other forms of shame. Rather, it's that constant feeling of never being good enough. When you grow up being constantly told that you are not good enough, you start to believe it, which then traps you into an ongoing cycle of negative self talk. For example, having an overly critical parent or abusive partner who was unable to tend to your emotional needs. This can lead to toxic shame and other mental health issues throughout your life. Some common signs of toxic shame, well, they include excessive self-blame. You're very quick to believe that everything is your fault. You believe that even you believe that you somehow deserve the abuse or mistreatment. Unable to forgive yourself. You feel incapable of self-compassion or forgiveness. Again, because you believe you must be at fault. You've been told often enough. Sense of powerlessness. Toxic shame can leave you feeling like you have no real power in your life, no control, which can lead you to allowing others to treat you as a punching bag. That sense of inadequacy. You walk around again feeling not good enough. You compare yourself harshly against everyone else. And, for example, at work, this of course can affect your job, getting a promotion, etc. Socially isolated. Constantly feeling like a bad person can cause you to withdraw. You'll turn down social offers and limit the people in your circle. The risk of this obviously is loneliness, boredom, depression, which are all seeds for addiction. Perfectionism. Now, this is a weird one. This is at the other end of the spectrum, but understandable when you look at childhood trauma. It's basically when you feel like despite your best efforts, you aren't good enough. What can sometimes happen is that leads you to a relentless strive for perfectionism. It's our way of saying up yours, to prove to parents or the abusive partner or whoever instilled that shame in us that we are good enough. So yeah, now for some tips for overcoming toxic shame. If the shame has been toxic enough to mess up your life with addiction, depression, no self-love, etc., you will likely need professional help. But in the meantime, or if you're not in a position to get help, these are a good place to start. I've said it before, but meditation and mindfulness. These are great ways to reconnect with your body. And something individuals suffering from toxic shame, this is often what you need to reconnect with self. It will teach you to observe your thoughts and help you to learn to detach from those issues. Toxic shame can make us emotionally reactive. So mindfulness helps us to undo those patterns. Self-compassion. It's important to try to practice self-compassion. In many ways, this is just an extension of mindfulness. But basically, it's just be kind to yourself. When you're carrying around toxic shame, you have to relearn how to be kind to yourself. Physically connecting with yourself in ways that show kindness is a good place to start. I know I say it every time, but journaling. This is a wonderful tool for mental health. As it relates to toxic shame, journaling can help you work through some of the negative messages you've internalized. One way to do this is to examine your negative thoughts more completely. For example, let's say your boss, your teacher, asked you to rework something on a project. Our first reaction is we normally go into that toxic shame mode. But instead of that, there are other ways. So let's start with what normally happens. You say things to yourself like, I can't do anything right. I work so hard on this, but yet my boss, my teacher, whatever, hates it. But where does that come from? Where it comes from is probably in childhood. Maybe your dad or whoever never approved of your schoolwork. You always found something to pick on. You never felt that your best was good enough. So now back to current day and that example. The boss didn't say the entire project was rubbish. You were simply asked to rework something. It doesn't mean that your work was a failure. You've simply been asked for a revision. So you've overreacted, basically. So by journaling, writing all this down and observing with mindfulness what's actually happening, this allows you to see things differently. Instead of feeling like it was an attack on you, you get to learn from it and to apply it. In reality, the suggestion was reasonable and you were simply asked to fix something. So yeah, writing out and analysing our negative self-talk can help us to detach from it and see it for what it is. It's literally our initial reaction is a byproduct of that toxic shame, but now you're working on it. Toxic shame has deep roots from childhood mostly. The healing process is going to take time. Overcoming the abuse or the impact of abusive or emotionally neglectful caregivers is not going to be easy. It's a learned behaviour now. It's almost like it's your identity. But it doesn't have to be this way. With professional help and a conscious effort to undo the harms of toxic shame in our lives, we can break from it. And this is where my inner focus to recover program differs. Whereas most addiction therapy and counselling focuses on the physical addiction, I focus on the emotional issues, helping you to overcome those so that the need for a coping mechanism basically becomes obsolete. So in this regard, my program would be a perfect support tool to accompany you on your sobriety journey, even if, and especially even, you have already begun your journey. See, the reality is, until you resolve these deeper issues, you will always be at risk of relapse or even substituting one addictive behaviour for another. Okay guys, hope you're enjoying this series on emotional issues and how they affect our recovery. Till next time, cheers.